Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us. You're watching OBN Horn of Africa. This is Future Africa Spotlight. Today I joined by Benyam Kitaw. Benyam Kitaw is the son of a very renowned engineer, Kitaw Ijigu. Before directly going to our discussion, I would like to ask Benyam Kitaw to tell us a bit about himself, and later he's going to tell us about his father's biography in short as well. Benyam, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. We're saying hello from Los Angeles, California, in the United States of America.
All right. Can you just tell us a bit about yourself? Because as I have said, Engineer Kitaw Ijigu has got big fans here in Ethiopia and all over the world. And it's a very great honor to track you in this very critical time to vote on the ongoing situation in Ethiopia as well. Tell us a bit about your career, family, business, stuff like that.
Yes, certainly. So I'm the oldest son, the firstborn of Dr. Kitaw Ijigu, the famous Ethiopian American NASA scientist. My educational background is in political science with a study in law, religious studies and philosophy. I've also done an apprenticeship in law as well as psychology. I've had different parts of my career, including in technology and banking and finance. More importantly than anything that has to do with me, has to do with my family legacy. Dr. Kitaw Ijigu is just makes me what I am. So I have to follow in his footsteps. We have actually a long history of being a part of helping and frankly building Ethiopia. My great-great-grandfather, that's my grandfather's grandfather, was Fatauri Gebriye, who was the main general of Emperor Tedros, I'd say Tedros. And so we have a history of being involved in defending, protecting, and building Ethiopia. And we believe that Ethiopia is the light for the dignity of all Africans and Black peoples around the world. And I think that's the best information I can give about me and my family background.
Thank you. A lot has never been told about your father, right? He's very reputable engineer in NASA space technology, but we don't really know what happened and why he assassinated. There is a kind of rumors, and can you clarify that for us?
Yeah, so first of all, there's a very parallel story to my father's life and the current state of Ethiopia. My dad was stuck outside of Ethiopia when the Derg coup took over. And so his life was drastically changed. He was a very young man, like 22 or so years old, 23 years old, when the Derg coup took over. He had no idea, what was to come next. So he just continued finishing his education at a university called Northrop University. And he started working for JPL, which is the division of NASA that's responsible for jet propulsion. So essentially any shuttle or propulsion system comes from this division of NASA in Los Angeles and in California, in a suburb called Pasadena. From there, he continued to build his career working for Boeing, including designing and creating many different types of technologies, which included lasers, which included military weaponry, including the Star Wars program. I myself, amongst the NASA guys that my colleagues that my father had, they knew me as the favored boy because many of the astronauts knew me. I personally knew Buzz Aldrin, for example, second man on the moon. And even now, the NASA colleagues that are alive, which are like age 70 something and above, still talk about how nobody gave, Buzz Aldrin never gave anybody his autograph, but the son of Dr. Kitaw Ijigu got Buzz Aldrin's autograph. So why is this story important? Well, because anytime an African does something, he represents all of Africa. So I saw that live as a boy and growing up. And oftentimes, American scientists would tell me that I was very lucky, that I had such a brave and intelligent and decent African as a father, and that I need to make sure to follow in his footsteps. So that tells me that regardless of whether scientists were American, Chinese, Indian, whatever, it's important as us, as Ethiopians, as Africans. And in my house, we spelled African with a K to show ownership. We own our stories. We own our identity. And my dad was a very good example of a combination of traditional Ethiopian beliefs plus modern progressive understandings of the way the world works, and he was recognized. So my goal is to just do what he did, be an example as an African, as an Ethiopian, anywhere I go in the world, and I invite all other Ethiopians to also be a dignified, intelligent example of Ethiopia for all of us.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah.
Likewise, you're also playing an important role on ongoing resistance against TPLF and the US intervention these days. And you're organizing demonstrations and campaigns against this biased reports of global medias and the US government's intervention in Ethiopian sovereign affairs. And can you tell us about it as well?
Absolutely. So I like to deal with things in a conceptual basis. So first off, it's important for us to address things as Ethiopians first. We have to address our problems first. Dealing with outside issues is another matter, which we're dealing with. You see me and many here in the diaspora fighting against imperialist forces and regimes, including Joe Biden. But the question that we need to ask ourselves first is, do we truly love Ethiopia? And if we love Ethiopia, then we have to love all Ethiopians. Then if we're going to say African solutions for African problems, as you've heard in the No More movement, we have to offer substantive solutions. So it's not just saying no more to Western intervention. That leaves the No More movement incomplete. We have to talk about what it means for us as Africans, as Ethiopians, to solve our own problems. So what does that mean? That means that we need to talk about the roles that Ethiopians, not outsiders, Ethiopians played in the destruction of Ethiopia. And this is important. We can control this, right? Whereas the outside stuff, we have to fight, we have to struggle, but we have to come back to these issues. So the major roles are, as you said, TPLF, how they've really damaged Ethiopia. OLF, they are clearly an ally to damaging Ethiopia, especially central Ethiopia right now. And we need to be very weary about political leaders that say that it's not the time to discuss these key issues. While I can't personally control what a Joe Biden or a British government official does, or frankly, the UN does, what I can do is I can influence those Ethiopian discussions about how we can solve those problems internally. And we as Ethiopians have to fight both sides. We have to fight the outside intervention as well as the problems that are happening internally.
A No More hashtag is very viral these days, and it's going to be a leading campaign. It just says no more, right? What does that no more connotes?
Well, see, so that's important because the origin of the No More movement is, in my opinion, is good, but it's incomplete. And so the first part is saying no more to Western intervention, meaning American government, UN organizations, British, whoever is coming to damage Ethiopia. So that's obvious. The second part is saying no more to fake news. What's happened is we found that there's evidence that the governments themselves are involved in creating fake narratives, and I'll provide some examples of that later in our discussion. But I want to push the Ethiopian discussion, both in Ethiopia and then in the diaspora, to include in the narrative no more, to make it complete, again, what we have control over. So, for example, it's important when we talk about no more, we need to say no more victims. So we need to tell the Ethiopian people, as well as the Ethiopian government, it's important to protect the people. This is a priority. This is a must. We need to also include in our conversation that if there's a problem with resource, that there's more than enough volunteers in order to take up arms against TPLF, against OLF. Equally important, we need to say no more to the legal mechanisms that made Ethiopia weak. We need to create a truly inclusive Ethiopian identity again. Again, those are things that we have control over, immediate control. So again, the No More movement partially is about, obviously, the outside intervention, Egypt, United States, UN meddling, how they're funding the terrorists, the TPLF, but it needs to be more complete. And we're finding that very quickly here in the diaspora, that we have to complete it. And that means the right Ethiopian voices coming forward and talking about it.
Many political scientists and political analysts claim that Ethiopia and the Horn region is very important for the US and for the Westerners, and US is striving to maintain its global hegemony in the Horn, right? On the contrary, the US government is meddling in Ethiopian current affairs and in Ethiopian sovereign affairs so many times, which incline to distract the nation. How dare a certain nation which got interest on a certain area would like to distract that particular nation? You got my point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, that's actually something that, again, that goes back to issues that we're not talking enough about, right? The narrative out there is that Africa is poor. And my father himself gave lots of lectures about the resources of Ethiopia in particular, and Africa in general. And the reason why Western governments, particularly the United States, want to intervene and cause mayhem in places like the Horn of Africa is because it's strategic militarily, but also there's resources. There's oil in the Ogaden. There's probably oil off the coast of Somalia, right? We obviously have gold. We obviously have diamond. We also obviously have all kinds of resources. So a weakened Ethiopian state also makes a weakened Horn of Africa, which makes it easy for outside influences through corporations, through governments, to exploit African nations, Ethiopia in particular. And it means they get access to the resources cheap. So how is it that they accomplish that? Well, they use an old Roman tactic. They're borrowing from an old playbook, old Roman tactic. Find the people that are willing to sell out and pay them in order to damage the indigenous populations. The two that are very clearly doing the damage are TPLF, backed by the United States, obviously. We see the evidence here in the United States. In Amara region alone, the war has caused over 2 million alone in Amara region, internally displaced people. That's unheard of. That's more than any other nation on the planet, right? Total in Ethiopia right now, there is 5 million plus. That's what we've counted so far. 5 million plus internally displaced people. That's more than many countries have as their total population, especially in Europe. That says that we need to do something now. We need to address as a culture, as a people, and within the legal mechanism. While we're fighting a war, we also have to make sure that we create the foundations for a safer Ethiopia. And that's the way we start fixing the problem.
Ethiopian National Defense Force is advancing to Tigray this week. But before 2 weeks, the giant global media used to report a fake news as if the capital of the nation is under siege and the rebels are going to control it after a couple of days, according to their report. That was totally a false narrative. And now the Ethiopian Defense Force controlled war battles in Wallo provinces. Why they failed to report the truth which is going on now?
Absolutely. So again, I wouldn't be Dr. Kitaw Ijigu's son if I didn't speak honestly, right? So there's 2 answers to the problem. Yeah. First is, who had the relationships with Western governments and Western media outlets? Well, that was the TPLF. What they did is they made sure to create contacts that were significant. We didn't realize that because as a culture, we need to improve on being proactive, right? But the other half of the issue is what did we do as Ethiopians? We sat back, okay? We didn't proactively solve problems. And so now we're kind of starting from behind. We're playing catch up. So now you're starting to see more and more voices, more and more organizations, people like myself involved all the time, whether we're contacting major media outlets, whether we're picketing and protesting in front of those media outlets, whether we're contacting Western media journalists, which I'm and definitely others are getting advances, and we're making inroads. We have allies, and we're making advances, and you're starting to see those improvements. In fact, what I would urge every Ethiopian, and frankly, every African, make a Twitter account today. It's important. Make an Instagram account today. It's important. These are battlefields for us, a part of the narrative. And it's not that time consuming. You just make a few tweets, make a few posts on Instagram, sharing information. So the more that Africans in general and Ethiopians in specific do this, we start to improve the narrative. And you see we're making gains. I guarantee you I will continue to advocate, and I'll make gains myself, and I'll push here in the United States as much as possible.
If the government is taking control of the entire Wallo, and yes, probably it might advance to Tigray as well, to the Tigray regional state, where the rebels based at. Do you think the Ethiopian government right now got a full leverage over TPLF?
Well, so this is one of the things that Prime Minister Abiy has done well, right? He's made peace with Eritrea, first truly democratic election in the history of Ethiopia. Of course, there needs improvement, but it's a great thing. And now he's decided to move forward and push all the way to Tigray. And it's important that we push him to do that. If you notice in Jeffrey Feltman's discussion, he said he wants TPLF to go back to Tigray. Well, I'll be honest with you, you need to pay attention and listen to this kind of verbiage. If TPLF is allowed to go back to Tigray, that means that they're not held accountable for all the damage that they've done. That also means that Egypt and the United States and other allies to the TPLF will use Tigray as a springboard, as a jumping off point to continue to damage Ethiopia. So I suggest that all Ethiopians push Prime Minister Abiy's government to push the TPLF and its military all the way back to Mekelle, find them in the mountains, arrest them, and force them to justice, to restitution. They owe Ethiopia, as well as all of the Horn of Africa, a lot. And so let's push Dr. Abiy to make the right decisions. It's good. He's making good decisions on this. Let's make sure he doesn't falter. We should help him.
As a political analyst, again, how do you see the U.S. intervention in seeking regime change in Ethiopia?
Well, okay, so there's two parts to that question. First is the part of the government itself, the Ethiopian government itself, but the other part is what is it that the Ethiopians themselves deserve, right? So the first part is obviously the U.S. intervention is to weaken the government in order to take away the right of the Ethiopian people. So we need to make sure that we make it very clear, both by our voice and frankly by our will, which includes military fight back, that doesn't happen. We need to defend Ethiopia on all fronts, and we need to push Prime Minister Abiy to do the same. There's no negotiation here. We either save Ethiopia completely and keep the government intact as a result, and then we continue making reforms. We make a better, more democratic Ethiopia, which is the best Ethiopian party in history and the best African representation of Black dignity in all time. So it's important we make sure to make Ethiopia successful in this.
You guys are working a lot in revealing the truths on the ground to the global community. You work with Anne Fitzgerald, with Jeff Pierce, with Lawrence Freeman, and others as well. And to give credit for Jeff Pierce, he recently disclosed the secret virtual meeting that held by retired diplomats of TPLF and the US, as well as some TPLF sympathizers. How do you see that, and what kind of credit should Ethiopians owe to Jeff Pierce at this critical time?
Yeah, well, first of all, we thank him. What's happening is he's being given information in order to help Ethiopia, and so since he has a platform, then he provides that information, including this particular leaked video. But what's important is that, again, as we Ethiopians, we need to be proactive. Dr. Eleni, Professor Ephraim, all the Ethiopians in those videos, I believe, this is my opinion, that the Ethiopian government needs to issue arrest warrants for terrorism against all of them. We should not just lean back and go, oh, we see what they're doing. Those are Ethiopians. We have authority in order to do something about that. We don't have to wait. But it is also very revealing that Yamamoto is the big face, and then that other lady, Vicky Huddleston. Mm-hmm. And that says a lot. That says that the U.S. government is using its influences directly on, remember what I talked about, those sellouts, those loose threads. Well, now the cat is out of the bag, and we can't just sit back. We have to be proactive. It's clear that they are Banda. It's clear that they are traitors to Ethiopia. Immediately, we need to push the Abiy government to issue arrest warrants for all of those people involved.
I would like to say thank you very much for Jeff Pierce for letting the cat out of the bag, as you've said. Yeah, yes. We owe him a lot as well. So another question, at this very 0 hour, Ethiopians and Eritreans in diaspora are working a lot. And how do you see that again in weakening the immunity of TPLF, which is aided by those imperialists abroad?
This is very critical, right? It's very good to see Eritrea, Somalia, and Ethiopia. And if you haven't caught it, even Djibouti is now joining in the struggle. This is important. This is important. So the more that we join together, the more we fix those sellouts, those loose threads. The more that Eritrea, the more that Ethiopia, the more that Somalia, the more that Djibouti work together, it's very easy to eliminate all of these, whether internal enemies or external enemies.
Of course, you tried to highlight it a while ago about this Western media biased reporters. Nowadays, the Ethiopian government is scoring a very decisive victory upon the rebel TPLF in the Wallo province. And still, we're not noticing reporters from CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, and Reuters as well. How do you elaborate this?
There's two answers to that. So first of all, that the National Army has also joined in full force, thank God, to push back TPLF. It will be easier for the mainstream medias to cover everything, the full narrative, now that the National Army has committed to 100% to the fight. And the question is how is it that we fix that? How do we bridge that? Some of these outlets are known collaborators with TPLF. We find some even Ethiopian journalists that are involved in this collaboration. So they write for a few. They write for BBC. They write for Al Jazeera. So there's four major media networks that are really involved in this plot against Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa. It's BBC, Al Jazeera, CNN, and two in the United States that are print media. New York Times, they had the jump on the narrative. And so we were playing from behind. Now we're catching up.
Ever since Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed came into power, he's been never surrendered to the US and to the Westerners, right? And you know that very well. How do you rate his caliber, his enthusiasm in resisting neocolonialism and the Westerners' influence as well?
So on this issue, he's done very well. But remember, we have a job as well to help him and help Ethiopia. We need to help him to make the right decisions, which includes pushing TPLF into prisons and maybe even the grave. So he's going to make good decisions, but we need to push him. We need to push him to finish the job. Ethiopia deserves peace. We deserve to be able to have injera. We
Okay.
deserve to be able to, right, to have a good time,
Okay.
not always be suffering and stressed. So
while the Westerners gallop to colonize Ethiopia through their media and through their aid cuts and different staff, the Easterners are standing beside Ethiopia at this very critical time. Again, we can mention Russia, Turkey, China, and somehow North Korea. How do you see their, support and solidarity with Ethiopia in resisting the US conspiracy in Ethiopia?
yeah, so I particularly like China stepping up. In fact, they a couple of their government officials even put a side-by-side tweet showing that Secretary Blinken was going to Kenya to talk about Ethiopia.
Yeah, a friend in need is a friend in need, right?
This is important, but this goes back to us as Ethiopians making the right. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it shows this old Roman tactic that I told you about before. Try to find allies that will sell out amongst the natives, right? And then use them to dominate the native population. Ethiopia won't do that. We won't submit. I won't submit. Other Ethiopians submit. Do I look weak? Does
Not
Ethiopia look weak? No.
Not really. Not really.
We will not submit. No, absolutely.
Yeah. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and the country of Thomas Sankara, Eritrea, Ethiopia, are vigorously fighting neocolonialism these days, and others are loading again. They're about to join the neocolonialism resistance, and as it is on Ethiopia is a matter of African independence, and this resistance is coined by PM Abiy Ahmed and Ethiopia as well. How do you see this initiative as well?
Well, this is important, right? This goes back to the Emperor Haile Selassie days about Black, African with a K, dignity and freedom, right? The ultimate thing here is happening is Africa is very wealthy in resource and in people. And neocolonialism is all about figuring out how to weaken wealthy African nations in order to get those resources for cheap, right? It goes back to that property issue we discussed earlier. So what we do is we fix our internal problems to make us stronger. And we stand up and we say no. We say no more. And that's what we need to do. And that's what we need to continue to do.
Okay, this brings us the end of our conversation for today. Benyam Ijigu, the son of a very famous scientist in history. I would like you to urge anything that you want to Ethiopians and Ethiopians in Ethiopia here and diasporas abroad. If you have anything to say, please welcome. You can forward any remarks, comments, and suggestions, whatever.
So the first step in fixing this problem is we have to love Ethiopia. If we love Ethiopia, everything comes easy. That means we love all Ethiopians. That means we want to protect Ethiopians. That means we want to unite all Ethiopians, which means we become a light to all other African nations, which makes us stronger, which makes our borders stronger, which makes it more difficult for outside powers to ever mess with our country again. So start with, I love Ethiopia. Then go, I love Ethiopians. Then go, I'm going to work hard. I'm not going to have sleep because I love Ethiopia that much. And we'll fix everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Benyam, thank you for making time for this valuable interview. And thank you for your insights as well.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye. Due to the interest of time, I would like to wrap up my discussion with Benyam here. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye. Have a good one.